Good morning. Beautiful day. It's good to see you here. Welcome to First Parish of Concord. My name is Ken Langer, and I am your summer minister. If you're online, please feel free to participate fully in the chat. If you are here in person and have questions about accessibility or the building, please see our ushers or any staff member, of which is me right now. Children are always welcome in the sanctuary. In your pews, there is a coloring sheet for all you kids out there, and there are crayons in the back. Also, there is the reflection question. If you would like to reflect on it and leave an answer and leave it here, I will post it for others to see and share. Also in your pews, here's the coloring sheet. You will find a connections card if you'd like to find out more about us. And we're trying something new this week. There's also in your pew an orange joy and sorrow or joy and concerns card. If you would like to share something with the congregation, please write it in here and it'll be collected before our prayer section. Our COVID precautions are masking in the building, distancing as you wish, and increasing our ventilation. We are glad to be a highly vaccinated community. Our speaker today, Matt Meyer, is a lifelong Unitarian Universalist with a long background as a musician and worship leader for UU congregations. Matt lives in Boston, but travels as an itinerant worship leader, bringing the good news of Unitarian Universalism to hundreds of congregations all over the country. He serves as the Director of Operations for Sanctuary Boston, which you can find online, and I hope you will check out. It's a contemporary UU worship community with rock and music and engaging worship. Matt's children's story, which you might have seen out front, Desmond Gets Free, was published last year as a book by Skinner House Press. It recently won a Nautilus Award for Social Justice in Children's Fiction. To get a copy for a child, teacher, or justice maker in your life, pick up a copy here at church. It's in front and also will be in coffee hour. Our master of the keyboard today is Eric Haneke. Today is Sunday, July 17th. It is one of my favorite days, National Ice Cream Day. How many are going to celebrate, huh? Come on. Today, our theme is all for one and one for all. In this church, we do not ask everyone to look the same, think the same, believe the same thing, or identify in the same way. What we do ask is that we respect the worth and dignity of each individual in our words, deeds, and our actions. Unitarian Universalism lifts up the believer rather than the belief. All who believe in love are welcome here. I invite you now to just take a moment to say hello to your neighbor, or especially if it's someone you haven't seen before, and to wave to our online friends. Let us now begin the service as a community of worship. These opening words are from Adrian Rich. My heart is moved by all I cannot save. So much has been destroyed. I have to cast my lot with those who age after age, perversely, with no extraordinary power, reconstitute the world. We are gathered one by one, source of love draw near. We are gathered all as one, all are welcome here. May the chalice we now kindle, symbol of our living faith, Inspire us to use our power to heal with love, help with compassion, and bless with joy, and to serve the spirit of freedom in the fullness of community. Please join me in reading together our chalice lighting response printed in your order of service. O flame of our faith, open our hearts and fill our bodies and souls with persistent strength. Enliven our spirits and engage us deeply in this life of ours, this sacred, essential moment now. From the fires of each heart, to this chalice we impart many sparks to one flame, giving hope to us again.
I invite you to join in our opening hymn this morning, number 298 in your hymnals, Wake Now, My Senses. We're going to do it maybe a little bit differently than how you've done it before. In my own community, Sanctuary Boston, where we meet on Wednesday evenings, we have a saying which is, let's begin with some singing. And then we'll have some singing together, and then we'll close out with some more singing. And one of the things that we've experimented with at Sanctuary Boston is why there are so few hymns that get played on the radio, and why no one sings along to hymns on the radio in their car, or at least not many of us. Some of us do, and one of the things that we're experimenting with is adding a chorus, a singable chorus. And so I'd like to try that experiment with you all this morning. After every verse, we're going to sing this chorus. It goes like this, very simple. Oh, oh, oh. Can we try that? Oh, oh. One more time. Oh, oh. You got it. And we're going to do verses just 1, 3, and 5. Wake now my senses, wake now my compassion, and wake now my vision, hidden there on the second page. I invite you to rise in body or spirit. Slow it down just a little bit. Here we go. Wake now my senses and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in all. Keep with the web of creation your vow. Giving, receiving as love shows us how. Chorus. Oh, oh, again. Oh, oh, wake compassion. Wake now compassion, give heed to the cry. Voices of suffering fill the wide sky. Take as your neighbor both stranger and friend, praying and striving their hardship. Here we go. Oh, oh, again. My vision, wake now my vision of ministry clear. Brighten my pathway with radiance here. Mingle my calling with all who will share. Work toward a planet transformed by our care. Harmony. Oh, again a little louder. sound good. Let's take a deep breath. You may be seated as you exhale. Well, in place of a reading this morning, I would love to share a story with you all, a story for all ages. I know there aren't a lot of kids here this morning, but we just pretend these stories are for the kids anyway. And today's service is about answering the question how we will take care of each other in times of a global pandemic, in times when we're struggling. How do we take care of each other one-on-one, and how do we create communities of care and whole societies of deeper caring that leaves no one behind? So I have just the story for you. Desmond the Mouse lived in the most beautiful meadow in all of the land. Every morning, Desmond would wake with the sunrise and spend the whole day long just playing and playing in that meadow. And every night, Desmond would go to sleep right in the middle of that meadow under the beautiful starry night. One night, though, Desmond awoke to find that it was still dark out. So he tried to roll over, get more comfortable, and go back to sleep, but something wasn't right. He could hardly move, and his tail was throbbing with pain. Reaching behind him, he felt that there was some sort of boulder seemed to have fallen just on his tail in the middle of the meadow. He tried pushing on this giant rock behind him with all of his strength. And then he tried tugging on his tail to get loose, tugging with all of his might. And he tried pushing and tugging and tugging and pushing over and over and over again. But it was no use. He was stuck. And when he was just about out of breath, though, he saw another animal passing by through the meadow. Good news, he thought. It was a tall giraffe. And so he called out, "Oh, giraffe, it seems that some sort of boulder has fallen just on my tail in the middle of the meadow. If you could use your powerful legs to just nudge it a few inches in the other direction, I could go free." Well, the giraffe laughed at Desmond the way giraffes do. "You silly mouse," he said. "That's no boulder that's fallen on your tail in the middle of the meadow. That is an elephant that's fallen asleep on your tail." Well, good news, thought Desmond. In that case, if you could just gently wake the elephant up and ask him to roll over even just a few inches in the other direction, I could go free. "I don't know about that," said the giraffe. "I mean, surely you know what they say about letting sleeping elephants lie. I find it's best not to get involved in other animals' business. I find it's best to remain neutral in times like this." "Well," Desmond said, "I do not appreciate your neutrality." The giraffe wandered off, leaving Desmond alone. So he tried calling out to wake the giant elephant. But even as loud as he could shout, his little mouse voice was just too far away from those giant elephant ears at the way other end of that giant elephant body. So again, he tried pushing with all of his strength, and then he tried tugging his tail with all of his might, and he tried shouting and pushing and tugging and pushing and shouting over and over again. And when he had just about given up, he saw a gazelle pass by through the grass. Good news, he thought. So he called out, "Oh, gazelle, it seems that an elephant has fallen asleep on my tail in the middle of the meadow. If you could just gently wake him up and ask him to roll over even just a few inches in the other direction, I could get free." "I don't know about that," said the gazelle. "I mean, surely you know what they say about letting sleeping elephants lie. I find it's best not to get involved in other animals' business. I find it's best to remain neutral in times like this." The gazelle wandered off, and Desmond sighed, almost to himself this time. "I do not appreciate your neutrality." Desmond tried one final time to shout with all of his voice, pushing with all of his strength, tugging with all of his might, and shouting and pushing and tugging and pushing and shouting over and over and over again. And when he had just about given up for the last time, he saw another animal pass by through the grass. This time it was a mouse off in the distance, and so he called out, and the mouse ran over right away and said, "My name is Nelson. What seems to be the problem?" Well, no sooner had Desmond explained the situation than Nelson ran all the way to the other end of that giant elephant body. And he stood up and he shouted to those giant elephant ears at the top of that giant elephant head, "Excuse me! It seems you've fallen asleep on my friend's tail in the middle of the meadow. If you could roll over just a few inches in the other direction, he could go free." Well, the elephant heard Nelson's little mouse voice way down on the ground, but his voice was just a bit too small, and he was a bit too far away. And to be honest, the elephant was just a bit too comfortable. He didn't budge. So Nelson thought for a moment, and he ran back to Desmond, and he said, "I think I might have an idea. Don't move." And he ran off into the grass, leaving a confused look on Desmond's face. And just when Desmond was starting to get worried again, he saw Nelson emerge back through the grass, but he wasn't alone this time. This time he had found 3 mouse friends. And each of them, they had done their job. They found another 3 mouse friends each, and the whole group of them ran all the way to the other end of that giant elephant body. And one mouse, she climbed up on the shoulders of another, and another climbed up on hers, and one by one, they formed a whole mouse ladder all the way up the back of that giant elephant head. And finally, Nelson climbed up the shoulders of his friends one by one, slowly and carefully. And finally, at last, he stood right at the opening of that giant elephant ear. And he shouted with all of his voice, "Excuse me! It seems you've fallen asleep on my friend's tail in the middle of the meadow. Roll over just a few inches so he can go free." Well, his voice was just too close and too loud to ignore this time. And so the elephant said, and then he rolled over just a few inches in the other direction. Nelson and his friends climbed carefully back down to the ground, and they met up with Desmond, and the whole group of them spent the rest of that day playing together in the meadow. Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who passed away just a few months ago now, had said, "If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you are a liar, for you have already taken sides. You've taken sides with the powerful and with the oppressor." He said, "If an elephant stands on the tail of a mouse, the mouse will never appreciate your neutrality." Archbishop Tutu believed in a God who he said took sides, a God who he said took sides with the orphan and with the widow and with the oppressed everywhere. As Unitarian Universalists, whether or not you believe in that same God, we have covenanted to create a world of justice and equity and compassion, and that means creating a world very different from the one we see around us today. And so it means we come together in communities and congregations like this to take sides for justice, to take sides for equity and compassion. It means that we come together to do together what we could not do alone, which is to side with love. May it be so, and may we make it so. Let's continue with some singing. Number 6 in your hymnals. Number 6 is "Just as Long as I Have Breath." Please rise in body or in spirit.
Just as long as I have breath, I must answer yes to life. Though with pain I made my way, still with hope I greet each day. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to life. Just as long as vision lasts, I must answer yes to truth. In my dream and in the dark, always that elusive spark. If they ask what I did well, tell I must answer yes to love. Disappointment pierced me through, still I kept on loving you. If they ask what I did best, tell them I said yes to love.
Let's take another breath, and you may be seated as you exhale.
Matt, if I could just take a second. If we could collect the orange cards now and go through them and then bring them up for prayer time. Thank you.
We are living in times of dramatic headlines in the context of a global pandemic that has taken so many. Every day, the headlines are unpredictable, they are dramatic, and they weigh heavy on us. And there is a deep question behind so many of them, behind the debates about healthcare, behind the debates about policing and prisons, about COVID, about the right to choose. There's this underlying question: how do we take care of each other? This is also, of course, a religious question. I sometimes think it is perhaps the religious question. In an emergency, when we need help and we need it fast, one of the most basic practical answers to this question is that we call an ambulance. Now, I grew up in a world where ambulances were something to be taken for granted, but they haven't been around as long as one might imagine. And before there were paramedics, trained professionals in these ambulances, it wasn't always clear whose job it was to take someone to the hospital when they were sick or injured. And before we had the system that we have now, well, there really wasn't a system. Sometimes it was firefighters who would pick people up. In some places, it was the local funeral home, which, I gotta be honest, it doesn't feel great. I can only imagine having some horrible accident in my home and hearing someone in my housemate family shout out, "Quick, Matt's down, somebody call the funeral home." I don't like it. More often than not, though, it was the police who dealt with medical emergencies. The problem, though, is that neither the police nor firefighters, and certainly not funeral home staff, had any real medical training, not beyond basic first aid. So their only job was to get someone to the hospital as quickly as possible so medical treatment could eventually begin. This was an ongoing health disaster for our country. And particularly, it was difficult for communities of color who were often ignored or even harassed by the police, those same police that were supposed to come and save them in an emergency. Then, in the 1960s, the federal government published a paper about all of this, saying that as many as 50,000 deaths a year were the result of a lack of pre-hospital care. Publicizing this report shamed the government into providing some money to address this dire situation. And when the new funding became available, there was a sort of Avengers-style gathering of badass activists that came together in Pittsburgh. A community organizer named Phil Halen ran a civil rights organization in Pittsburgh that was focused on healthcare. So he saw an opportunity. First, he reached out to a jobs training program called Freedom House, a group of African Americans working together to deliver healthy food to their neighbors. And then he reached out to a local doctor, someone with a particular interest in emergency healthcare. And together they formed the team, the Freedom House Medics. The doctor trained these new staff people in how to provide emergency care, and the Freedom House team who knew their communities took on the job. And they were the first emergency medical service in the United States to be staffed by people with actual medical training. They contracted then with the city of Pittsburgh as the first civilian paramedics, and they saved 200 lives in their first year of operations. The model of Freedom House medics was, of course, then replicated across the country, saving countless lives since then, and changing our very understanding of healthcare. Together, this team created a new kind of job. They created a jobs training program for African Americans and underemployed folks in their communities, and they created a whole new branch of medicine. But because the first paramedics were nearly all African American men, the police fought them every step of the way. The police regularly tried to keep the paramedics from providing necessary medical care, sometimes leaving injured people wounded on the side of the road. In spite of this police harassment, though, Pittsburgh had defunded the police, at least in this way, for this purpose. The city of Pittsburgh, and then nearly every city in our country, took away a significant part of the police job and gave it to more qualified people. Pittsburgh and every city has been safer ever since. Someday, I believe that mediators and counselors and social workers and mental health professionals and community organizers will have taken all of those roles away from the police as well. And when that time comes, if there are any police still left, they won't have so much to do, and what they do will be much safer for them as well. And when that time comes, going back to the way it is now, well, that will seem as absurd as the idea of going back to having the police take over the role of paramedics again. The story of Freedom House is an elegant answer to this most central question of our lives and of our neighborhoods. How do we take care of each other so that no one is left behind? This story reminds us that collective problems require collective solutions, which means that every one of us has a role to play. In this case, it was the government bureaucrats, bless them, who approved the funding. It was the Freedom House team delivering the groceries that knew their neighbors and were rooted in their communities. It was the doctor with the technical skills that offered the training, and it was the community organizer that brought the whole team together. They did together what none of them could have done on their own. Everyone had a role to play, and everyone's role was made more meaningful by doing it in collaboration with a wider circle. All for one, and one for all. There's another similar story I want to share with you. In the early days of the United States, nobody saw it as the job of the government to fund firefighters. It wasn't obvious at the time, and so the first volunteer firefighting brigades that formed to meet this need were in some ways like a private insurance company. If you paid them, they would fight a fire at your house. But if you weren't subscribed to their particular organization, their particular company, they would watch it burn. It got worse from there, though. That is just the beginning of our problems. In some cases, particularly in the larger cities, the brigades worked more like a mix of violent street games organized as fraternal orders. They came together around bonds of class and race and ethnicity, and they fought each other ruthlessly for territory and market share. A book called How the Irish Became White describes the situation this way. With firefighting as a pretext, the brigades fought continuously over control for territory and extorted money from homeowners who had good reason to anticipate a fire if they failed to pay. Homeowners, arson was high on their list of weapons. Remember, these are firefighters we're talking about. And one of their favorite tactics, this is my favorite part, was to set a fire near the territory of a rival company and then lay waiting in hiding for them to show up so you could beat the heck out of them when they did. A report in 1953 said, quote, "There is scarcely a case of riot brought before the courts that has not its origin in the fire companies. Just take a moment and imagine this scene where you're at home and you look out your window to see your neighbor's house is on fire, and one gang of firefighters, the ones who started the fire, are outside beating each other senseless, fighting with another gang of firefighters while the house burns to the ground. And your first thought is, not again. This was the violence of the privatized brigades before the government took over. And you'll notice that in all of the polarized debates we have these days about government regulation, no one ever suggests that we re-privatize firefighters back to the racialized mob violence of the past. Now, it's easy to laugh at the naivete of our forefathers, but I believe that someday our descendants will tell the story of a time, this time, the 2020s, when wildfires ran rampant over our communities, devastating our country in a way that small city fires and homes burning to the ground could never compare to. And they'll tell of a time when, despite the wildfires devastating our country, the privatized fossil fuel companies who caused the fires went unregulated. And political leaders at the same time shrugged their shoulders, saying how much they wished there was something to be done about such unspeakable violence. Perhaps, though, our descendants will also be able to tell a story of how eventually the people came together to address the emergencies that faced them and learned to put out the fires that were plaguing their people and to put an end to the economies of violence that created them. Dear ones, let's remember our history, that it may help us imagine new futures as we continually ask this question, how will we take care of each other? And then ask again, and how will we take care of each other even better? And then ask again, how will we leave no one behind? What do our firefighters and paramedics, though, have to do with our purpose here on Sundays? At the time of the firefighting gangs, interestingly, there was a perhaps similar divide opening up in the religious sphere. At a time when mainstream Christianity had declared a false binary between the saved and the damned, between those bound for heaven and those destined for hell, our Universalist ancestors responded with the heretical belief that no one was unredeemable. They responded with the belief that no one was being left behind, wounded on the side of the road. And they said that no one was saved until we were all saved together, all for one, and one for all. Later on, when humanism converged with universalism, we ended up with an even higher standard, one that said we shouldn't wait until the next life for salvation, that we can work to save each other here in this life, that we shouldn't wait till we get to the hospital or the funeral home to begin treatment on the wounded among us. We can start taking care of each other right away. The ongoing health disaster of a global pandemic is a question of how we will take care of each other. The right to have a child or not is a question of how we will take care of each other. Wildfires and flooding and droughts that are the result of increasing climate chaos, these are questions also of how we will take care of each other. Let us remember our history, remembering those who came together to do together what they could not do alone, those who imagined a new way of answering this question, way beyond what had ever been pictured before. Let's remember this history and imagine new futures for our children and for ourselves. There are better ways to answer this question than we see in the headlines today. I believe that the trajectory of humankind is a painfully slow process to stop fighting each other while our neighbors' homes are burning, and instead learning to put out the fires that are plaguing our people. We opened with the words this morning of Adrian Rich, who said, "My heart is moved by all I cannot save. I have to cast my lot with those who, with no extraordinary power, reconstitute the world. I appreciate that Rich begins by acknowledging the limits of individualism, all that I cannot save. But, she says, but by casting our lot with others, nothing less than the world is reconstituted. All for one, and one for all. There was a time when a health emergency meant calling the police and praying for unlikely help from unqualified people before we imagined a new way of caring for each other. There was a time when fighting house fires was only for those who could afford privatized insurance in shady deals with racist gangs, before we imagined that safety for one was safety for all. A more universalist world means remembering this history and imagining better answers to this question of care. It means finding collective solutions to our collective problems. And it means that every single one of us has a role to play, just as every one of our roles is made more meaningful in collaboration with others. As the climate activists say, to change everything, we need everyone. Let's do it together. Let's keep on loving boldly to widen the circle. Let's keep on singing loudly to root ourselves in community and connection, and keep on moving forward toward a world we know is possible, where no one is left behind. May it be so, and may we make it so.
I invite you now to reflect on the following question, and if you so choose, write about it on the back of our white paper. If you leave it behind, I'll collect it and maybe even post it. The question is this, and then I'll give you a moment to reflect on it and share your thoughts on the paper or in coffee hour afterwards. The question is, what would it look like to build a deeper practice of care in your home, in your neighborhood, or in your country?
Lately I've been thinking about roots and wings. Lately I've been thinking how I need these things. Roots in the ground to keep me strong. Wings on my back so I can fly on home. Lately I've been thinking about roots and wings. Lately I've been thinking how I need these things. Roots in the ground to keep me strong. Wings on my back so I can fly on home. Lately I've been thinking about roots and wings. Lately I've been thinking how I need these things. I need roots in the ground to keep me strong. Wings on my back so I can fly on home. Lately I've been thinking about roots and wings. Lately I've been thinking how I need these things. I need roots in the ground to keep me strong. Wings on my back so I can fly on home. Roots in the ground to keep me strong. Wings on my back so I can fly on home. I need roots in the ground to keep me strong. Wings on my back so I can fly on home.
Do we have any cards to bring forward? Okay. Ours is a spiritual community of compassion where we find meaning and connection together. We take this time to share our concerns within the support of this beloved community. I have nothing to share with you that I've been given this week. However, you may take this time to call out the names of those who you hold in your heart. Please do that now. Please join me in singing Spirit of Life. The words are in your order of service. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. I invite you to join me now in a moment of prayer, contemplation, and reflection, followed by a moment of silence. As you are willing, in body or spirit, please close your eyes. Take in a deep breath, and then let it out. Concentrate on your body. Let it relax from head to toe. Calm your thoughts and be present. Open your heart so that you may feel love and share love. Finally, connect yourself with your sacred principle. Spirit of life, creative presence, energy of being, sacred one, be with us and hear us. We keep in our hearts today all the sorrows in names that have been spoken and that go unspoken. We keep in our hearts the people of Ukraine, and the suffering they must go through. We hope for an end to that war. We keep in our hearts. This week will be very warm and muggy, so we ask that we reach out to each other and make sure we are all safe. And finally, we ask that we become the blessed community we hope to be. Find a stillness, hold a stillness, let the stillness carry me. Find the silence, hold the silence, let the silence carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, I will find true harmony. Let us now offer our gifts for the sacred and important work of this community. You can donate here in person. If you are a visitor, please consider yourselves our guest and save your donation until you are ready to join us. Before I begin the normal invitations, I'd like to invite you to return for the next 4 Sundays. I will be giving the sermons, and I'm going to be doing a 4-part series on a book that I've put together. So I hope you'll join me. If you'd like to keep up to date on upcoming events and activities here at First Parish, please read or sign up online to receive the First Parish weekly newsletter, which comes out every Friday. Please join us for coffee outside there together. There you will find information about the worship sharing circle, parish milestones, and a welcome table for anyone interested in finding out more about us.
Our closing song is Keep On Moving Forward by Emma's Revolution. It goes like this. I'm gonna keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Never turning back. Never turning back. Let's try that. Keep on. Gonna keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Never turning back. Never turning back. I invite you to rise in body or spirit. Another thing we often say at my own community in Sanctuary Boston is that we invite you to sing and participate in whatever way moves you. If that means trying out some new harmonies and bravely, go for it. If it means just humming along, if the words elude you, that's just as good too. If it means sitting in quiet contemplation and just soaking in the sound of the room, that's just as good. And if it means singing out like you're alone in the car with the radio, this is the time for that as well. Here we go. Keep on moving forward. Gonna keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Never turning back. Never turning back. Singing loudly. Gonna keep on singing loudly. Gonna keep on singing loudly. Gonna keep on singing loudly. Never turning back. Never turning back. Keep on loving boldly. Gonna keep on loving boldly. Keep on loving boldly. Keep on loving boldly. Never turning back. Never turning back. Keep on moving forward like you mean it. Gonna keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Never turning back. Never turning back. Singing loudly. Gonna keep on singing loudly. Keep on singing loudly. Keep on singing loudly. Never turning back. Never turning back. Loving boldly. Gonna keep on loving boldly. Keep on loving boldly. Keep on loving boldly. Never turning back. Never turning back. Keep on moving forward. Gonna keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Never turning back. Never turning back. Amen.
My friends, go in peace, return in beauty. Go in kindness, return in friendship. Go in love, return in compassion. Go in hope, return to wholeness. Go in faith, return to sacred community. May it be so. Please join me in the benediction together. That's right, we'll do it with rhythm. That's all right, here we go. Ready? Go out into the world in peace. Have courage. Hold on to what is good. Return to no person evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering. honor all beings. May it be so. Enjoy the postlude.